Hi, and welcome to this episode of the immersive podcast, Voices in Engineering. Today I'm joined by a special guest, Ben Bennett, the founder and director of leading digital transformation firm Luminous Group. We're going to discuss the use of virtual reality in construction, augmented reality on sites, and explore the latest immersive technology to hit offices around the world. Enjoy. Ben, welcome to the Arse Left podcast. We're here this morning to talk a bit about you and your company, Luminous Group. So before we get into the detail of Luminous Group, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, certainly. Morning, Kevin. Thanks for having me here today. So, my name is Ben Bennett. I'm the managing director of the Luminous Group. We're a development studio and sort of technology consultancy firm based up in the north of England. I'm, as I said, the MD. I've been with the company since about 2008, but it actually started off as a family business. But we've been on quite a journey, and the business has evolved considerably since it was set up back in 2004.
We go back a considerable length of time. There is a bit of a theme through these podcasts. I'm speaking to people who I've got a bit of a personal relationship with. As you know, we do a lot of work in the Northeast now. And we're trying to partner strategically with companies in the Northeast and other parts of the UK as well with our other disciplines. And before we get into the detail about Luminous Group, I was going to ask you, what do you feel is special about working in the Northeast and the opportunities it brings to companies like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, shall I give you a bit of background, just the sort of evolution of Luminous, and just sort of set the scene, because that probably gives you a good understanding where we've come from and how we've evolved, and specifically within the north of England.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, just to sort of give you that background, we were founded back in 2004, and we were actually a surveying business, so specialising mainly in land survey, so go out and surveying all sorts of different sites across the north of England. And the business was very well established. It was set up by my father back then. And it was throughout the 2000s, obviously lots of development projects, lots of work going on within the north of England, and also a lot of heritage projects. We've been very lucky to have lots of fantastic heritage spots on our doorstep, places like Newcastle, Durham Cathedral, fantastic heritage around here. So a lot of the work we did was land surveying, but also building surveying. So digitally documenting or surveying these historic sort of monuments and buildings within the area. Now, my background isn't surveying, but when I joined the business, my background is from a computing background, and I joined the family business back in around 2006, 2007, and looking at how could we really take the business forward and adopt new technologies. So up until then, the way we would go and survey a site or a building was using a total station, a theodolite, and doing single point measurements where you would set the instrument up and you would take measurements of these buildings and produce your 2D CAD plans. Now, we were very lucky that when I joined, I was saying, what new technology is out there? How could we bring this into the business? And laser scanning was this new technology, which was very much in its infancy, and it just appeared on the market. What laser scanning is it's effectively a camera-like instrument. It's the evolution of a theodolite, but instead of doing single-point measurements, you set this instrument up, it fires out a laser beam, and it basically scans everything that it hits, creating this huge data set. Now, we were really lucky that when we were looking at this technology, we were trying to find a project that could sort of get us into this technology and start using it. And we had an ongoing working relationship with Newcastle. And Newcastle, again, looking at how could they document the castle, but with very high accuracy for posterity, but also so that it could produce plans on how to refurbish the building, replace stones, but have an exact record of every single stone within that building. They go down. Every individual stone is actually documented and labelled, so they've got that record of everything. So we managed to convince them that laser scanning could be an option, and we could come in and scan the entire castle in 3D. And we managed to get our first laser scanning off the back of that project and document Alnwick Castle. So that was a great way for us to start leveraging new technology, we wouldn't really have had that opportunity if it wasn't for this rich heritage on our doorstep. And Heritage has actually been quite good at driving technology. They've always been looking at how they can use new technology to preserve, buildings and the different sites. So that's where we've pivoted back then from just being a land survey company into looking at using new digital technologies to survey sites. And then we sort of evolved from there. We did a lot of work again down at Durham Cathedral was another fantastic one where we scanning these complex buildings. And the advantage of these sort of laser scanning technologies is that you could never digitally document a complex, old building like that by hand. In the past, people would try and do single point measurements, draw these things up, and you'd be on for years and years. So laser scanning was really revolutionary technology, which transformed us as a business, but it was having these fantastic sites and opportunities within the north of England that allowed us to take that forward.
That's a really interesting blend of heritage and history and modern technology. Just regarding the Luminous relationship with Arslif, can you tell us a little bit more about that, what you've done for us?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, a number of, moons ago now, Kevin came up with some of the guys, and we were able to sort of showcase some of the new technologies we've been using. So we've evolved from just doing 3D scanning to then creating 3D models of environments and then seeing how can we really utilize them in other environments. So we've been sort of really pushing the boundaries of virtual reality. And Arslif have been a great client in that they were looking at, how could they harness some of this technology and use it in new ways within their business. So it's been great to sort of work with companies like yourself who've been willing to take that sort of leap of faith and use these new technologies in new ways. So we create some fantastic virtual learning sort of marketing guides for you, but also hopefully help you use some of that technology in ways, other ways that you can harness it within the business.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues that we faced as a construction industry, but also as a specialist part of the construction industry, is the skills gap, and it's attracting people into the work that we do, which is great in the summer, and it's never so great in the winter when they're outside working on sites. And one of the inspirations that we had was to harness the gaming technology to appeal to gamers of the younger generations and see whether that's going to be a gateway to start getting people into construction. And in fact, the work that you've done for us, Ben, when we go around the different universities, they call them trade fairs or whatever, when we bring out our VR headsets with everything preloaded on it, we generally have the deepest number of people at our desk trying to see what Arslif's all about and ground engineering is all about. So we're kind of hoping that we've ticked the box there, and it's certainly got traction. Obviously, it stopped a little bit because of the coronavirus, and we're not allowed to share headsets and all of that good stuff. But up until that point, it was becoming a very successful tool for us. How do you get buy-in from clients like Arslif and others into virtual reality and into the technology and the high-tech products that can be developed now?
Yeah, and what we find is the technology we have is great. It looks flashy, and people instantly get engaged with it. But we have to really take them on a journey to educate them about the benefits of it and how best to use that technology. What we don't want to do is we don't want to be doing gimmicky things. We don't want to be doing things for the sake of it. We want to really be providing real business benefit to clients by using this technology. So there's very much an educational piece to get them up to speed and understand how it can benefit them within their business. We do that through a number of different ways. We quite often will run for innovation or workshops around the technology, bring lots of different technology and bring different people. What we find is it's great to get that insight from people across the whole range of a business, so you get everybody involved on that journey and getting. What we quite often find is, good ideas can come from all over. So having that real mix of sort of skill sets really brings to the forefront of, where can this technology be harnessed? Where can we use it within the organization?
I'm going to put in a curveball question here, Ben. I get Teams. I like Teams. Teams as a tool. I like virtual reality, and I like what that can bring. Do you think there'll ever be a time in the future where we're all sat at our home with a virtual reality headset on. We're all in a virtual office, communicating to one another via a Teams platform or similar, not being in the office, but being present via a virtual media platform or virtual reality platform, whatever you call it. Do you think that's going to be a thing?
No, I think absolutely it is. And it actually is a thing already. There's already platforms out there. There's a platform called AltSpace where you can have multiple people with different VR headsets all log in, and you can set up your environment. You can set up, is it going to be a conference environment? Is it going to be sort of a fun environment? And you can schedule your meetings. And if people have got the headsets, they can log in, and you can have a virtual avatar of yourself, and you can go through a board meeting online virtually. So that technology is actually already there, and people are starting to use it. The big thing the issue with it is all around social presence, and that's what people are trying to crack. It's would you really take the sort of the chairman of the board seriously as an avatar of a cartoon character jumping up and down in VR? So there's a real sort of push to try and have realistic avatars.
Yeah.
And this is something that Facebook have been working on significantly, putting a lot of investment in. Can we get a real social presence where you have a something that looks as realistic as possible in that virtual space? And they're trying to do that with a range of different cameras that you can basically slot onto the front of your headset. So they're recording your face and then recreating a digital version of that face in VR. One of the problems I'm finding is it's struggling to pick up those little nuances that give people that sort of level of realism and those sort of that body signals that people would normally have in a real world conversation. So they're actually now looking at trying to use AI to interpret and fill in those gaps and bring that extra level of presence to it. So there's an awful lot of research going on around that at the moment. And I think once, a few years down the line, once they crack that part of having that real life avatar version of yourself in there, then yes, it will be mainstream. And it's more and more prevalent at the moment when we're having remote working, people working from all around the world, being able to have that social presence and have people physically connect. There's so many benefits to that. Even just having the environmental impact of not having all this travel is absolutely huge. So yeah, I certainly see it will be we're not there yet, but it's definitely coming.
It's fascinating, also terrifying at the same time for social animals like myself who need to be around people. We touched on this a few weeks ago in another episode about this phrase social distancing, which I don't like. I like the phrase physical distancing, but I think at the moment we should certainly not be socially distant from anyone. But I said my piece a few episodes ago, and we'll not go any further on that one. Just expand on that conversation, Ben, a little bit more with regard to any other applications or uses for technology like VR, and we'll focus on construction to begin with. So is there anything else that could be added to VR in terms of adding value?
Yeah, I mean, what we not just VR, but immersive technologies in general is this whole new space of tech which is out there. And the way we sort of define it is almost like a spectrum of devices. So at one end of the spectrum, you've got the real world. The other end of the spectrum, you've got the virtual world. And then you've got this whole mix of devices that fit in there. So at the far end where it's virtual, you've got virtual reality. At the real world, you've got augmented reality, where you've got an overlay of information, on a screen. You've got like your pilot's heads-up display. You've got Pokemon Go, that sort of technology. But there's this new sort of medium in the middle called mixed reality. And this is where we're really seeing going to be huge advances specifically for, in the construction sector. And mixed reality is the basically fusing of physical and digital content. What that actually means is you can put a mixed reality headset on. The device is able to interpret the world around you. And then you can put 3D holographic content in the real world, but that content persists over time. And the 3D content can interact with the real world around it. One way to sort of imagine this is if you've got a mixed reality headset on, you can have a virtual tennis ball. You drop the virtual tennis ball and it'll bounce off a real table and roll along the real floor. So it's having this interaction of 3D, digital and physical content. And this really opens a whole range of applications in construction and the wider sort of business sector in general. A typical sort of an example, you can imagine you're standing on site, you've got your mixed reality headset on. The mixed reality headset will know where you are in the world, or will know where you are on a construction site, and then you can visualize the construction going up around you. You can visualize, different phases of the design build. You could see, your shell of a building. You can overlay the MEP, the electrical items. Do all this and mix this physical and virtual. So you have the real building shell, but the virtual MEP and wiring designs or proposed designs overlaid on the real area, and then you can walk around and identify clashes. So it's a hugely powerful tool that we see. Again, being able to visualize things under the ground, things that you can't see, so you can walk around and you can be positioned. The device will know where you are again on the site, and be able to look down and see where the pipes, where any anything is under the ground as well. So it's really delivering so much more content that allows you as a working construction to make much better informed decisions about what you're doing. So there's really lots and lots of different applications. That's just one area. I mean, another areas are things like obviously training, and that's where we're seeing a real benefit in being able to have on the job or on site training. So you might train in virtual reality if you're doing something that's specifically dangerous or something that you can't do in real life in a controlled environment. You can do that in virtual reality. But if you actually if you're out on site and you're in the middle of nowhere and you've got a machine that's broken down and you need to fix that machine and you haven't got an engineer, if you put a mixed reality headset on, you can either dial into an expert remotely, so someone sitting back in an office who can take you through that procedure, and then even augment and overlay the repair procedure onto the real equipment. So augmented procedure showing, take this bolt out, replace this valve, rewire this here. And then also having at your fingertips access to any technical documentation, videos, all at hand at once. So mixed reality is really taking this technology into the field and delivering it to really allow us to enhance operations, maintenance, training procedures, but on the job itself rather than in the classroom.
I know we touched on it last year or the year before. That's when we were looking at it initially for RSLIF as a training platform. And it's certainly something that we're keen to look at in the future. But I've seen some snapshots of this technology in use in our wider group where they've got the headsets on in the buildings. They've got the cage overlays, pre-concrete pour, and they can pick out clashes. And it's a super powerful tool. And how does that fit with BIM? Because BIM's a very well-known and well-recognized platform in the UK, but is this something that's going to take over from BIM?
It's just a convergence of these different technologies. So building information modeling is effectively just creating 3D models, but models which have intelligence and data behind it. So it's it's the difference with a lot of the virtual reality and mixed reality devices is they're not necessarily geared up to ingest BIM models at the moment. BIM models are very complex and have a lot of detail and data in there. All of VR sort of mixed reality headsets are built on gaming platforms, and it's a different type of 3D model. So at the moment, what we have to do is we have to take a BIM model and then we have to repurpose it, remodel it as a games engine sort of asset. And quite often we then lose that sort of intelligence that's in there. That's changing. There's a lot of there's platforms coming out now that are trying to address that sort of issue. We use specifically, it's called the Unity games engine to build our content. They have just brought out a product called Reflect, and that is designed to specifically connect your games engine to your BIM software and pull that content directly across. So tools like that are starting coming to the market, which will make it more prolific in being able to access BIM content through these headsets. Some of the other issues is again with sort of BIM models, hugely complex, lots of information. Being able to render that on a untethered headset in the field hasn't been possible up till now. There are again technologies starting to emerge. Microsoft have been working on a thing called remote rendering, where effectively you have your BIM model sitting in the cloud. Your headset is just like a client headset. It connects to the cloud and then it streams that data across. So the model is streamed into the device. So it's not actually running on the headset. It's all the sort of processing and is done in the cloud. So we're starting to see it, but it's almost sort of, we're looking at sort of two different disciplines, bridging the engineering world with the gaming world, but we are starting to see them converge now. It's
absolutely fascinating stuff. I'm sure the audience are taking some inspiration from some of these things, because I'm a little bit speechless with where this is going to all end up for a simple mind like mine. So if we're going to drop the construction focus and we're just going to look at a general question in terms of the future, and in your opinion, your professional and specialist opinion, what do you think the future holds across all platforms with regard to virtual reality and augmented reality and technology in general, Ben?
Yeah, so I think virtuality has its place in training, in when you want to put people in sort of specific environments, hazardous environments that you can't do conventionally. So, something is a burning oil rig or things like that. But I certainly see augmented mixed reality is where the bigger value for business in general is going to come. And that's been able to augment that, information around you. And we're entering this sort of era of spatial computing. So you're no longer limited to your PC. The whole environment around you is your workspace, and you can have content and screens and information anchored all around you. Now, for this to become mainstream, we still really need to see an evolution of hardware that is much more consumer friendly. So obviously at the moment, we're wearing HoloLens 2 headsets. These are sort of £3,500 headsets. They're pretty big, they're pretty chunky. But we're seeing, Google Glasses making a comeback. Apple are bringing out augmented glasses. Once these become available in a small enough form factor and look stylish enough, we'll start getting mass adoption of these sort of devices. And then I think that's going to become the norm, that a headset mounted device will be the normal. It eventually will replace your mobile phone. That everything will come through the sort of stream through your glasses.
I'm going to ask you the killer question: is the office dead?
I don't. Not yet. No. I mean, I think one of the things that we've certainly found, obviously we've moved to remote working, and it works great. I think, again, if you have a nice a home office and you don't have screaming kids and you've got time in a quiet area to work, you're definitely more productive at home. But what we are finding with our staff is that it gets to a point where, they miss that social interaction,
Yes.
And you miss on that sort of those moments of serendipity where you bump into someone in the corridor and you have a brainstorm, you come up with ideas, and that you can't get that through Zoom. Now, if we get that social presence through virtuality headsets where you can have a virtual office and everyone can meet up virtually, then eventually we might replace the office. But I still think, we're still some way from that.
It's not the answer I wanted to hear, Ben, but I think it's probably I think it's going to be the reality in the future. Ben, I think that's enough in terms of content for you, and a great insight into Luminous Group, and a great insight into where you think it's going to go. So we're going to flip this. We always like to end these with a few curveball or quick fire questions. And if that's okay with you, we'll get straight into it. And I'm going to ask you, what was your first job?
So my first job was actually as a streaming video consultant back in 1999. And just to put this in perspective, I was trying to sell video streaming when most people had Nokia phones, and YouTube hadn't actually been invented back then. And I actually remember going in to try and sell this to clients, and they were saying, "Oh, video online, video on a phone, that will never catch on." So it was a fantastic experience, but it was a stark reminder that sometimes if you can have technology that you're just too far ahead of the curve. And it actually didn't. The company I worked for at that point didn't survive, unfortunately. But it was a great experience there, and seeing how a tech company, works at that very sort of forefront of the bleeding edge.
You touched on something there, Ben, because I was having a look through some old photographs, as you know, via our private WhatsApp group, and it reminded me that when we were kids, we We had cameras, we had films, we had actual physical photographs. We didn't have iPhones, we had text messages, and that was it. And we thought we were cutting edge in terms of technology back then. And look how far it's
Yeah. Don't forget the pager. I had a pager.
Yes, the pager. Yes, that vibrating box on your belt. Yes, don't forget that. Don't forget that. I think the NHS still use them, actually. But anyway, moving on. Ben, what's your favourite album?
Oof. I mean, I've always been a whole host of different music, but if it was to say a specific artist, I've always liked Jamiroquai.
Yeah. Favourite song?
Cafe Del Mar.
This one always catches people out. We've had some random answers to this one. Sometimes I've never even heard the films. But yeah, I've given it away there. What is your favourite film?
So favorite film was that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Probably Aliens.
Aliens. Well, that's completely different to the one that we had last time round. We had a love film, I think it was, which I'd never heard of. We'll round up on one final. In terms of your career, what's your highlight so far?
I think one of the great things that we've managed to do is we've been able to sort of travel all around the world. Once we embraced sort of 3D scanning technology and using that, we landed some fantastic projects. So I think probably one of my highlights was actually last year going out to the Microsoft Connect conference in Las Vegas. And that is really sort of the pinnacle of technology. So that was a fantastic experience. Excellent.
Well, Ben, I think it's fair to say that this podcast is pretty timely in terms of technology merging with the reality of what's happening now. And it's fair to say, in terms of my opinion of Luminous Group and yourself, you're definitely at the cutting edge of what's around the corner, in my opinion. And it's been great having you on here today. Thank you very much for your honesty, and I hope the audience has learned a little bit more, as I certainly have.
No, thank you. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Arslift podcast, Voices in Engineering. If you've enjoyed this episode, head over to our website, www.arslift.co.uk, to discover all about who we are and how we work with our valued clients. Never miss an update on a new episode when you subscribe to our podcast feed. If you found value in our conversations, we'd also appreciate a follow on LinkedIn.